For every policy decision made by the national government, it is the local government that enforces these at the front lines. The administration's pandemic response is no different.
Any kind of testing does not excuse you from the rules of RCT.
But different local governments, different styles, different ordinances, different penalties. But sometimes someone holds himself accountable.
Well, I just would like to apologize to everyone.
And sometimes it isn't just quarantine restrictions and health protocols that are broken, but also culture and tradition, which is the proverbial salt rubbed on the open wound of pandemic fatigue. It's just unfortunate that the national government's pandemic response is judged by what each and every city or municipal government does. I'm Hontiveros. We'll be asking the hard questions for stories that matter to you. Front and center is breaking quarantine rules, enforcing health protocols in a population that's battling pandemic fatigue, how cities are dealing with violators within their borders, and a long and hard look at a viral party in Baguio that made the contact tracing czar quit. While the same health protocols apply to all, cities and towns have their own ways of carrying them out. Front and center is the Interior Department's officer in charge, Undersecretary Bernard Florese. Sir, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Yusek Florese, let's begin with this. When a local government drafts ordinances for compliance to health protocols, in this case, the COVID-19 pandemic protocols, what kind of guidance is given to them by the national headquarters, meaning the DILG? Or kanya-kanyang style, interpretation, or penalties?
Yes, Pia. Our basic reference is yung RA 11332, which is a response to notifiable diseases like COVID-19. But then, yung mga LGUs natin, through our memorandum to them, we gave them the authority and enjoin them to have their or legislate their own ordinances para uniform yung implementation natin out of the guidelines set by the national government, by the DILG and the IATF, and through the different leagues, for example, the ULAP, the League of Provinces, the League of Cities and Municipalities. We had a common provisions, especially on the penalty side, no. Yung napag-agreehan natin dito for the LGUs to come up with the respective ordinances. Kung wala pa, kung meron naman, they just have to amend it, no. Ang common ground namin dito is yung penalty is from 2,500 to 5,000 in the case of provinces. Sa cities, ganun din, 2,500 to 5,000. And then for the municipalities, 1,000 to 2,500. And then imprisonment of 10 days, 30 days. Para iisa lang yung may uniformity tayo sa implementation ng violation ng quarantine.
Okay. And because lahat ng municipalities, cities, and provinces have their own ordinances, that means the rule applies to all or to none at all. The rule applies to everyone and walang no exemptions will be considered.
Yes, wala tayong pinipili dito, Pia, no. In fact, marami na tayong na-issuean ng show-cause orders. At least I think there are four mayors who were issued show-cause orders now for violation of quarantine, plus the latest perceived violations. Wala tayong pinipili dito kahit sino ka pa man.
Well, there's been plenty of strong reaction, Yusek Florese, because people are drawing parallels or comparing the treatment, because you have an old man who joined a protest in Metro Manila. He gets jailed. He pays bail of 10,000, which he couldn't afford really. But you have a social media influencer, a celebrity and company getting a slap on the wrist of paying 1,500 pesos for violating health protocols in a city by not wearing masks. So even if the circumstances are different, dahil nakasuhan naman yung isa na iba naman din yung nangyari, people see this and perceive unfairness. So how does the DILG, how does the national government address an issue like this?
We give and respect the autonomy of our LGUs. Kaya nga sila na yung pinapamahala natin dito. Kaya dun sa memorandum circular na pinalabas namin, we give authority to the LGUs to implement the guidelines set by the IATF through the respective ordinances. Ngayon, katulong naman natin dito yung Philippine National Police, yung even the barangay officials sa enforcement ng batas sa PIA.
And Yusek Florese, just my final question, because there is a messaging, and some people say maybe there is a problem also with the messaging, because that goes out and it shapes people's perceptions and judgments of the national government's response to the pandemic. Because yung LGU nga is the front line eh. So, pag may ginawang LGU doon sa lugar nila, syempre ang tingin ng tao, gobyerno ito, national government ito ang Duterte administration. Do you see that as a challenge for you?
Ang sinusunod naman natin dito is for as long as due process is being followed, the mayors can impose the respective ordinances. But if the mayor himself is the one involved, then we elevate the case. For example, kung mayor involved, then it can be investigated by the RIATF, and then the findings will be submitted to the DILG, and based on the facts, if there is a need or if the data are sufficient for us to file the necessary charges, then we file it to the ombudsman, and then the ombudsman will see to it na kung meron namang probable cause, then they can meet the necessary punishment to the erring official, government official. But basically the essence here is pantay-pantay. Nobody's above the law. Yeah.
Okay, of course, but Yusek Florese, just be very clear, there has been praise also for some local government officials, mayors, for example, Lino Cayetano of Taguig, taking action on a party of another celebrity in his city, and he apparently didn't mind spending that political capital to take action on that. Same goes for Makati, with what sometimes things happen there. Anyway, well, thank you very much for joining us on the show on Front and Center, Interior Undersecretary Bernard Florese. Thank you, sir. The stories that matter are front and center, how city mayors are punishing rule breakers, and the Baguio party that caught everyone's attention for all the wrong reasons. Join us in the conversation here on CNN Philippines. We'll be right back. We keep the stories that matter front and center. I'm Pio Hontiveros. Welcome back to the program. With the threat of the new COVID variants, local leaders are doubling down on enforcing protocols and punishing violators. In Taguig, the city government ordered the closure of a restaurant where a celebrity threw a birthday bash. And in Makati, authorities are cracking down on bars and drinking spots. Over the weekend, police also arrested an alleged drug peddler in a bar. Front and center is Makati City Administrator Claro Certeza. Well, Mr.
Yes.
Certeza, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Let's begin with this. Can you give us a very quick overview of the ordinances of the city of Makati when it comes to COVID-19, especially yung health protocols?
When we were confronted with this pandemic, we adopted certain measures through ordinances to address. Basically, Pia, the first thing that we had to do was control the movement of people. So that we imposed a curfew, which is now between the hours of 12 midnight to 5 a.m. So unless you are an APOR or authorized person outside of residence, you will be apprehended and sanctioned with a fine if you are caught outside of your residence at this time. Of course, pursuant to IATF guidelines, we limit persons below 18 or above 65 from going out of their residences unless it is absolutely necessary or justified. We also restricted the use of facilities like entertainment facilities and amusement places because this will cause unnecessary congregation of people that can heighten the transmission of the disease. We also regulated the use of some facilities, like for example, here in City Hall, we have limited access to City Hall and as much as possible encourage people to do online transactions with the city government.
All right. So, Mr. Certeza, these ordinances, of course, they're not meant to make life difficult for people. They're actually meant to make life easier, especially because of this pandemic. And we presume that the rule applies to all or to none at all, and no fear or favor when it comes to applying these rules. And Mr. Certeza, I wanted to zero in on yung entertainment facilities because over the weekend, Makati police, Makati authorities raided that bar, and you are being very conscientious about this, right? You're not going to allow operations like these to happen. People having too much fun in a bar, and then things can go wrong, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. In fact, we have our own teams monitoring operations, especially of bars and entertainment places, because they are absolutely prohibited from operating at this time by the national government. So we have regular monitoring, and as soon as we receive information or verify that you are a bar and you are operating against our regulations, you are subject to closure. And this is a graduated penalty. Your first offense will merit several days of closure, leading up to a permanent closure at the end. And not only the bar owners, but also the people who are frequenting these places are subject to our regulatory fines also.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, the City Administrator of Makati, Mr. Claro Certeza. Thank you, sir. The stories that matter are front and center. The Baguio party that made the contact tracing SAR quit because of lapses on so many levels. This discussion continues after this short break. Welcome back to Front and Center. We want answers on the stories that matter to you. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Baguio City grabbed headlines last week because of the controversial birthday bash of entertainment personality Tim Yap. Now, that party made him and his guests pay 1,500 pesos each for breach of health protocols. Now, that party also made Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong step down as contact tracing SAR. Front and center now is the Baguio City Mayor himself, Mayor Magalong. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Well, let's begin with this. Mayor, you took a very bad social media beating and bashing because of this, for this, not just from ordinary citizens but from residents of Baguio as well. Para bang lahat ng ginawa nyo ng maganda para sa Baguio at para sa contact tracing efforts ng bansa in the middle of this pandemic, parang nawala ng parang bula. Is your resignation as contact tracing SAR your way of making yourself accountable?
Okay, Pia, what really happened last week was quite a stressful week. We were really surprised on the reactions of many netizens, especially when they started talking about the breach of protocols and violations of the minimum health standards in the Manor incident, and that prompted me to resign as contact tracing czar. As on hindsight, I realized that may pagkukulang din ako, no? While many people were saying na, hindi, marami kang distractions, people were talking to you, they were introducing yourself, people taking some pictures, but on hindsight, I realized also na kailangan ko rin palang naging observant at nagbigay rin sana ako ng notice dun sa mga safety officers na kailangan constantly to remind the crowd na dapat they have to stick and closely comply with the minimum health standards like physical distancing and wearing of masks. So that looking at what happened, I feel that I should be held accountable. No, ganun talaga ang leaders eh. Leaders should be responsible for what their unit does or fails to do, ano? So I realized na kailangan din pala na maging responsable rin ako. That's the reason why I decided to resign as contact tracing lead.
Well, Mayor, that birthday party was January 17, and if we're not mistaken, 9 days later, January 26, that's when all the social media posts went viral because the partygoers themselves posted pictures, photographs, and videos of the party. And only then were you forced to impose the fines because, just enlighten us, no, kung hindi naging viral po yon, hindi po mapipilitan ang Baguio LGU na impose yung mga penalties na po yon?
Well, alam mo kasi Pia, what happened was that we just stayed there for almost 1 hour lang, ano. We arrived at 8 o'clock, na-delay yung event. Nag-umpisa yung event ng 8:30 and then we left early kasi nga meron akong virtual mass dahil ika-9th day ng father ko, no? And my father died in the US. So morning yung daytime yung mass dun sa US. So we have to attend, so we left early. And then hindi ko na-realize na may mga violations pa during that time eh. Hindi ko pa na-realize eh. Only when I saw yung mga post, then I finally realized na, ako, ganito pala ang nangyari doon. And as I've said, maraming distractions kanina. A lot of people were talking to me, so hindi ko na ganong napansin. Ano?
Okay. All right. And Mayor, ang dami kasing nagtatanong, bakit 1.5 lang yung fine? Clarify things for us. For every LGU kasi meron po kayong mga ordinances, no? And it will differ. Different ordinances, different penalties. So, ang Baguio LGU, kapag hindi po kayo nagsuot ng mask, pag nahuli po kayo in public without a mask, you're fined 1.5. Kaya't 1.5 lang.
No, it's not. I was really surprised kung bakit 1.5 yung binayad nila, no? Pero ang fine namin for not wearing your mask is 1,000. And then may increment yan ng 1,000 every time na you commit the violation up to the third violation, and that's the only time that you will be eventually arrested and confined.
Oo. At the time, Mayor, let's clarify this para talagang Baguio and the Cordilleras was in MGCQ, which allows gatherings up to 30 to 50% of a venue, and is that why that is why we had there was that birthday party? However, and my follow-up question here is, I hope you can reply to this at the same time. How does that go with or go against, no? What the rule is, no mass gatherings. So no mass gatherings, pero pwede mag-party sa isang venue basta 30 to 50% off. Nagkaka-confusion kasi ang mga tao eh. O hindi pala tayo pwede mag-party, o pwede pala tayo mag-party. Hindi pwede mag-mass gathering, o pwede pala mag-mass gathering. So ano po ba talaga?
Well, ito naman kasi, ina-allow naman kasi yung mga ganun na mga events provided na the attendees will only be 50% of the total capacity ng isang area. One is, I just would like to emphasize na it's an open area. It's a large area. It's a large area dun sa likod ng manor. No? And there were only about 30 attendees on the part of Mr. Yap. Ang nagparami naman dun yung crew ng yung workforce ng manor, and at the same time yung mga merchants who were selling their products to the guests. Yun lang yun. And of course, our cultural dancers. Pero still, relatively a large area talaga.
Well, Mayor Benji, my final question would be, you've already said that your resignation as contact tracing SAR is irrevocable, but you will be helping sa contact tracing efforts dito sa Cordillera. However, you did say that if President Duterte asks you to stay on, that you would.
Yes, I said that this morning during my interview with another network, PIA. And who can refuse the president? No? And the president is just so persuasive, and I don't think anybody can simply resist the president. So, alam mo, pag-usapan na lang namin Secretary Charlie ito.
Okay. Well, Mayor Benji Magalong, thank you very much for joining us on the show. We do understand how you feel, no? Criticism, whether or not you resigned as contact tracing SAR. Maraming salamat po sa inyo, Mayor Benji Magalong of Baguio City. Well, it wasn't just protocol that Yap and his guests broke, but also tradition. Front and center is former Ifugao Representative Teddy Bagilat. Kong Teddy, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Let's begin with this, your tweet. About 5-6 days ago, you said, and I quote, "I thought an eventologist was some sort of anthropologist. In this case, there's something culturally wrong, starting with we don't ride horses." And for purposes of show and tell, we're showing your tweet together with the photograph you are referring to. Please give us a lesson on Cordillera culture. Yung sa horseback riding muna.
Yeah, well, the horses were brought to the Cordilleras by the Spanish missionaries when they tried to Christianize the communities in the Cordilleras. Pero we never rode them. Mga sakristan, yung mga kasama ng mga Spanish friars, they preferred to walk. So I guess one can say that we have horses in the Cordilleras. Some of them are wild, or most of them are wild. They're in Sagada, they're in Baguio, they even have horses in Ifugao before. But we never really did get the habit of riding these horses. So parang, yun nga, when I tweeted that photo, if the purpose was to promote tourism in Baguio, capitalizing on the rich Cordilleran heritage in the region, then that would be a wrong portrayal of Cordillerans riding the horses.
Okay. Well, because people have this impression that people here ride horses, but that's really because of Wright Park and John Hay, the horses there. But also, Kong Teddy, you said that, and we quote, "I am good with non-Ifugaos wearing our Ifugao bayaong or blanket. It means they honor our weave. Just to let people know, the bayaong is usually worn as a sign of nobility and honor." And also, talk to us about the Igorot headdress.
Yeah, I would wear our ethnic attire during special events, during my inauguration, during cultural festivals. And so I asked one of the elders, what would the headdress, the G-string, the Ifugao blanket, and the bayong, what do they signify? And yun nga, sabi niya, the headdress is supposed to signify a person with wisdom, the G string that connotes the industry of the Ifugaos or the Cordillerans in general. And then yung bayoong, that's the Ifugao blanket, usually worn by people who are considered honorable or dignified or someone respected in the community. So in short, hindi siya basta-basta sinusuot. No? We normally, when we have guests from other places and they have helped the province or we want to appreciate them for their assistance, that's when there's a ceremony and then we place the Ifugao Bayoong drape over their shoulders. No? I'm not saying na you can never wear it.
Yeah, that's true.
But yun nga, every time you wear it, you have to be cognizant of the fact that this is worn with honor. It's supposed to be worn with dignity and integrity.
Okay. And yeah, well, Kong, Teddy, what you're saying is, I guess the moral of the story is before you party, study, especially if you're going to incorporate certain factors or facets of the culture where you're having your party, for example. I mean, of course, that is aside from the fact that you're having your party in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, that actually was my first point. We want to promote indigenous culture. We appreciate that, but you're doing it in the midst of a party, so that's something wrong already altogether. No? And then I guess we can't help but sometimes react to these portrayals. Kasi in the past we have already been vilified, discriminated. No? Indigenous peoples in general, no, sa mga trade fairs noon, no. In exhibits, no? And sometimes even the books also portray indigenous peoples differently, no? So that's why every time you want to make an event and capitalizing on indigenous culture, it's important to do research.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us here on Front and Center, former Ifugao Representative Teddy Bagilat. So this is the kind of show that makes writing this particular segment, making sense of it all, a little bit difficult. Because really, how do we make sense of this all? And yes, make that not just one, but several question marks. And the collective thought bubble just popped. What were they thinking? The missteps, the facepalm moments, the irony, the sense of entitlement, the risks, and to really stretch the disbelief, the cultural misappropriation. The audible gasps of social media disbelief and the public anger boiling over from a pandemic-fatigued people. We are supposed to be in this together, but where is the solidarity? Enough already. This is Front and Center. I'm Hontiveros. Thanks for joining us.